From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy lays down his markers for passing an increase in the U.S. debt ceiling in a speech Monday to the New York Stock Exchange. What did he say, and will President Biden even agree to negotiate with the Republicans? The president has refused so far, but the debt limit will be reached now, we think, in June, and financial markets are getting jittery. Welcome. I'm Paul Gigot. I'm here with my Wall Street Journal opinion colleagues, Kim Strassel and Kate Batchelder Odell. With all the attention on Donald Trump and intelligence leaks and other stories, the fiscal debate in Washington has been on the back burner. But a return to the front on Monday as Congress returns to work after the Easter recess. And Speaker McCarthy laid out his starting offer for debt ceiling talks, assuming those talks ever take place. Let's listen to a summary of what he says the House will do.
Since the president continues to hide, House Republicans will take action. Okay, so here's our plan. In the coming weeks, the House will vote on a bill to lift the debt ceiling into the next year. Save taxpayers trillions of dollars, make us less dependent upon China, curb our high inflation, all without touching Social Security and Medicare. Simply put, it puts it on a fiscal responsible path in three ways. It limits, it saves, and it grows.
Limits, saves, and grows. Kate, that's the summary line. But what specifically is Kevin McCarthy asking to pass? What are they going to attach to this not clean debt ceiling increase?
Yes, Paul. I think the Republicans have asked for a couple items that I think are good policy and good politics. One is the energy bill that passed the House recently with the support of 4 Democrats, I believe, and basically would improve permitting for big projects in this country, which we've long advocated for. They get bogged down, multiple jurisdictions, environmental reviews. So that's one item. Another one that McCarthy is looking at is including a requirement to work as a precondition of receiving food stamps. This is another one that I think can resonate with Americans. There's broad political support for that. We just saw a referendum in Wisconsin where 80% of voters said that they think welfare should be combined with work. So those are 2 items. And we're also talking about a returning to October 2022 spending levels in the discretionary accounts, which is not an enormous cut to merely 2 fiscal years ago after we even some large COVID spending. So I think it is a good, workable plan. I think it's disappointing that he doesn't think entitlements can be touched, but that is the politics of it. And I think if Republicans got any one of these things, it would be a success for them.
Yes, he's also asking for any COVID-era spending that has been authorized but has not been spent. That would be carved back, and they would repeal the authorization for it and not spend it. Much of that would be also, they want to carve back the president's student debt write-off spending, which may, in fact, get some help from the Supreme Court on that, which may overrule the president's debt write-off, which is upwards of about $400 billion in spending. But Kim, no, it doesn't seem to that I heard that there was a distinction he made in discretionary accounts between defense and non-defense, which suggests defense could be part of the negotiation. And then, of course, Social Security and Medicare off the table. As Kate said, that suggests they have heard the pressure from President Biden and Donald Trump not to do anything, and that would be just too hard a political lift. But nonetheless, none of this is really, that they're proposing is really radical stuff. I guess the real question is, can the Republican House, with only that 4 or 5 vote margin, stay unified and pass this?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the real test here. Most of these provisions that he has laid out do have generally broad support across the caucus. Louisiana Representative Garrett Graves was tapped by McCarthy to kind of wrangle together all the different caucuses within the Republican side. And these are some of the baseline things. And you're right, none of them are overwhelmingly big asks. In fact, they're pretty reasonable. And I think that that's an interesting aspect of what McCarthy is doing here. It really struck me. What he's done is not asked for a lot of wild stuff, but put a lot of stuff in there. And then also, I think the key thing is he is saying that in return for this, we would lift the debt ceiling to get the country through about May of 2024. Now, of course, that's smack in the middle of a presidential primary. Nobody's going to want that. But what McCarthy's trying to do here is ask high so that any negotiations, they can drop some things and come to an agreement that would still be acceptable to his caucus. I think he's doing a couple of other interesting things here, too. One, in the speech, he laid out the history of this. The White House obviously has been claiming that debt ceiling fights are not the place to demand spending restraint, but he laid out the history here over the last 35 years. You have had 8 deficit reduction measures that were attached with some sort of spending restraint. I think what he's also doing with Medicare and Social Security is interesting because, remember, the White House and President Biden himself went after McCarthy. They're trying to make the claim that because Republicans want to cut spending, that they're going to hurt these vital senior programs and push Granny off the cliff. McCarthy is trying to turn this on its head and say, in fact, we are now spending so much money servicing the interest on our debt that it's going to begin crowding out these vital programs. And it is, in fact, the White House that is putting these programs at risk by not negotiating some sort of modest spendus reductions to deal with our debt problem. So he's trying to tackle that as well. The question is going to be, does he really have enough support to get his very narrow caucus all on board with the bill? If they can and get it across the line, they'll sort of be saying, okay, the ball's in your court, Senate Democrats, and Mr. President, we've passed something. What are you going to do in return?
Right. And if they don't pass that bill that he promises, then they really don't have much leverage at all, because Biden will say, see, you can't even get this through the Republican House. But if they do pass it, that is, they raise the debt ceiling, and here they say these are our provisions, then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate Democrats will take their cues from Biden, obviously. But it may be that they want to just say, no, we're not going to negotiate at all. But then that does raise the stakes for them, too, politically, I think. Now, I want to read couple of other lines here from McCarthy's speech because I think they're potent in terms of laying out what he says they will do and, of course, puts House Republicans on the spot if they don't. Number one, he said, defaulting on our debt is not an option, okay, but neither is higher taxes, higher interest rates, higher inflation, more dependence on China, and an economy that doesn't work for working Americans. Let me be clear, a no strings attached debt limit increase cannot pass. Now, Kate, that says basically we're not going to give you a clean debt ceiling, which is what Biden wants. And not only that, it can't pass with a majority of House members. Now, I think the president's strategy here will be to delay at the last minute, create maximum pressure on the House Republicans, even if they pass something, by saying, see, Wall Street is now nervous, stocks are falling, could be a default, and so on, and then hope that the Republicans break, can't stay united, and he can pass a clean debt limit with House Democratic votes. That may be what he's hoping for, but there's a lot of phony assumptions there. One is there really is no need to default on the debt. Even if the debt limit is breached in June, there's more money coming in regularly. It's not as if revenue stops coming into the Treasury. And that money can be prioritized by the Treasury to pay interest on the debt. So maybe some parts of the government would have to shut down for a while, but we would not have to default on the debt.
Right, Paul. I mean, I think that underscores that this is fake brinkmanship. But to your point about the president, I mean, Kevin McCarthy said today that he hasn't heard from President Biden on this subject in 75 days since their meeting. So I think that makes it pretty obvious that the Democrats are trying to delay on this. And historically, they've had a pretty good record on getting Republicans to cave at the 11th hour. So I think now McCarthy's put this marker out and he'll have to show that he can do something different. I'd say it's really incumbent on Senate Republicans to support his efforts to get these changes through to energy policy and welfare that, like I said, poll really well and make sense, to try to strengthen the House's hand a little bit there and to try to get Biden to negotiate. And again, with such broad political support for some of these things, if Biden's really serious about being the national unifier we've been waiting on now for so long, he'd go along with one of them. But unfortunately, I think he's going to try to wait till the 11th hour and try to jam Republicans.
Yeah, the unification, Biden, that vanished into the mists a long time ago. I don't think we're going to see that Biden appear at all. I think he has been told by his people that, look, the Republicans will stampede if we keep the pressure on, and that's what he's going to try to go for.